Welcome to URI meeting number 3. Thank you all for joining. This is the third meeting in the direction of getting URI standards, moving towards final. A quick recap for listeners. In the last meeting, we discussed proposal 2400 URL format for transaction receipts and proposal 4804, that is Web3 URL to EVM call message translation. And as next steps, authors were advised to make some changes, like for proposal 2400, the author mentioned that he would be revisiting the proposal and make a pull request to bring the proposal to review. He left some comment on the Discord channel, and I have added all of them in the working HackMD file. I'm going to share the link here in the chat for a quick reference. And there was another proposal, that is 4804. The author was recommended to incorporate suggestions shared in the meeting and update in this meeting. There was the third proposal, 5139. I mean, that is not a proposal. Actually, Sam Wilson mentioned that he would be working on creating an RPC endpoint standard. So he proposed an EIP, which is EIP 5139 remote procedure call providers list. This is a new proposal and probably was discussed in the last meeting. So I think we can go ahead and start with the proposal 4804. By the way, welcome, Greg.
Hello, hello.
Hello there.
Hello. So let me share my screen. So I prepare a few slides regarding the 4804. I think last time I introduced some actually ERC 4804 and some questions, and Mickey gave some suggestions. So I feel like a lot of people may not have full context of what it's going to do. So today I just prepared a few slides to tell what it's going to do, what are some comments we had last time, and how we fix them, and what are the remaining topics that we want to discuss, and then also open for suggestions, comments on how we're able to address those concerns. So what is EIP 4804? Actually, it is HTTP-like. It aims to be HTTP-like URL so that we are able to locate Web3. Here, the Web3 is more precisely a EVM compatible blockchain. So resources. So it's very similar to HTTPS because we want to have give the user a similar style that they can easily using the existing understanding of HTTP and to apply to the new URL. But unlike HTTP, which locate DNS and also the corresponding web server resources, and so for Web3, it will replace the DNS with the ENS. So here is an example of using ENS, and also is able to replace the port number with the chain ID, so that it just behave just very similar to HTTP, but it have different semantics of the rest arguments in the path. For example, the first one, it will be treated, so the arguments will be separated by //, and then the first one will be treated as master ID, for example, balance off, and then can follow multiple arguments. Right now here, this one is using ENS as an address. So basically it's looking for Zach's balance of a contract. And then it also will tell us what the expected return types that will display on the browser. So we already have a gateway extension that support this. So you can take a look at, right now I have a Firefox browser where I can put the ENS homepage.eth, which is the homepage of the ENS. Basically, when we expect the request, it will make a make us a list of requests, which basically will call the corresponding contract that we saw from ENS, and then we'll provide the corresponding call data that is passed from the corresponding method and also arguments, and then the contract will tell us what the content will look like, and then it will display on the basically the browser supported by we have a extension here.
Sorry to interrupt here. I believe there was a hand raised. Greg, if you have any question.
Sure.
Yeah. What's the objective? Like, I can understand the website logic, like going to resolving a website, but what's the logic behind having a path name? So like for methods and arguments. Like, why append querying to this?
I mean, what's the why we need a method ID argument?
Well, actually, let me rephrase that. Sorry, I feel that was really confusing. Sorry. From the last call, if I'm not mistaken, like one of the big things that I think myself and Mika both were a bit confused with, although I don't think I spoke much, is like, how does this much different than just like looking at the ENS contract and resolving whatever the address URI is set within like that parameter there?
Not to forget to mention that these would need to be URL encoded or URI encoded, which is not described, so the period wouldn't even be allowed in your current example. There was an issue with return types discussed last time, an issue with the usage of the Web3 scheme, and a request to change the scheme, if I recall correctly. And the chain ID here is done as port number following what HTTP would do. However, every other URL EIP, so 681, 831, 2400, 5094, etc., all use an @ symbol and then the chain ID. And in this case, you're feeding user info through the URL, which is a little weird because the user info would probably come from the injected provider of the browser.
Yeah,
so we wouldn't have that beforehand.
The key thing is that we do not rely on any, like, for example, MetaMask or any, for example, wallet that we are still able to directly locate the Web3 resources. So how, for example, this user info, it doesn't need to pass to the wallet. It can just go to the browser and the gateway or the extension, so that it will basically translate this user info.
Right, but then we need a gateway or extension.
Yes, that's
right, and that would have to point at some RPC ID, which is then predefined by the gateway. Right? So
Sorry?
You're stuck with centralized servers making the decisions for you and no way to upgrade to a situation where you could pick your own RPC endpoint.
So it depends on the extension, how the, for example, extension implement, for example, for Brave, like, for example, it has native integration with IPFS, right? So then it can, for example, specify which gateway, for example, JSON RPC server, or maybe it can itself can be become a light client, so that you can just directly query all the information from the, for example, Ethereum blockchain or any other blockchain, and so that it doesn't require, for example, strong dependency on what kind of jurisdiction RPC it can be used. Right, so this is just a purely way that without any dependency, what kind of resources and what kind of the information from I want to call the blockchain.
So a question about that I have is the tag equals networking and order equals newest there. Does that imply that data gets sent to the contract, or is that some kind of like browser side filtering that would have to go on there? Because if it's sent to the contract, then that means there's there would have to be some kind of like extra indexing that you wouldn't want to put in the contract. But if it's on the browser side, then to make sense of the results that get returned back, there has to be some special casing there. So I'm not really sure how that's supposed to be interpreted.
I'm sorry, the volume is pretty small. Like I cannot hardly capture.
I don't know, maybe that's part of the spec that I didn't see, but that makes sense. It would make more sense for that to be part of the fragment data to me, if it's on the browser side.
Yeah, from the browser side, you mean the fragment data? Yeah, that's the naturally. So here I did not put the fragment part, but fragment part will also still handled by the browser side, which is the same as HTTP. I'm not sure I explained the this correctly.
Well, so like the return types there, shouldn't that be part of the fragment instead? Because that's for the browser to interpret the data it gets back instead of being sent to the contract.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I got it. Okay, yes. For the return type, the thing is that if we put it in the fragment, and then if I open a browser to basically we are discussing whether we should have a server-side rendering or client-side rendering, right? Using fragment is kind of like client-side rendering, so it tells, oh, this is kind of an integer, and if we put it in the question mark, then it will be server-side rendering, which the server-side will, and it can be an extension or native integration or gateway that can say, hey, I want to return an integer back to the client. So here my choice is to use basically the server-side rendering, because like if I use fragment, then that means that I need to return a long HTML with the method, the fragment method, to tell how I'm going to parse this to the front end. But with the server side, that we just return an integer like in JSON format, and that will be much simpler to handle.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Cool. So then I can move forward. Actually, regarding this query part, I also have a topic before I want to move this EIP to the review stage. So for the last meeting, so basically we are discussing a type auto detection feature of this URL link. It is a very important feature. The purpose is to simplify URL without introducing confusion. So for each argument here, we will basically we'll have a type detection that automatically detect the type if it falls in some subspace of the arguments. For example, if it's pure number, then we will always treat it as U_256, or if it's some fixed number of hex, then we will treat it as bytes or address. All other types, then we will treat it as dynamic sized bytes. And then also we change the fallback type detection. Right now is for any other types, then we will treat it as a name. So for example, here is this example, then we will treat it as a name so that we will try to resolve it via the .eth name resolver. So that, and then we will translate to replace it with an address. So the update is that last time we prefer using the name over the string as a fallback type detection. So for example, suppose I want to call a contract which will basically show an image with a string, then it will not work because originally we use the string as a fallback. Right now with this change, then the user has to specify include the type. But here is a string and with the exclamation mark, which tells that, hey, this is the foreign type is must be string. Then it will call show image and parentheses string method, and with one.jpg that is encoded in UTF-8. But for example, for other example, like I can suppose I want to query the Zax.eth balance, and it will just work by auto type detection, and it will treat it as a name. And it will also treat, for example, one.jpg as a name, but most likely this JPG is not supported by either gateway.
Am I understanding correctly? If I'm saying that like you've added a bunch of ways that it should kind of try and auto detect whether it's a file, an image, an ENS name, or an ID name, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then 30 more things. And then you're adding a bunch of extra workarounds to specify that it is a string. So you can do string exclamation mark. So you can say that it is a string. And then like, if I want to enter the string luke.computer, then that would not resolve as an ENS domain. That would resolve as a string, even though that is an ENS domain as well.
Yes, that's correct.
So there's a lot of ambiguity and room for error in your URL system then.
Why?
Correct?
I mean, following this rule?
Because if somebody just defaults the input in there, then without specifically specifying every single type and making a URL very long, then it will probably cause some error at some point by something being interpreted as a UN256, a byte 32, an address, a byte, or an ENS address, or something different, right?
So as long as there's no like explicit type, then it will apply this auto detection rule.
Right.
So for example, with this explicit type, there's a exclamation mark, which basically will not be in any of this basically rule in this in the ABCDE. So as long as I detect exclamation mark, then I will treat it as explicit type. And then if, for example, this can be also wrong, right? It can be ABC, then it will just return, oh, this is the user request is wrong. So they will be in the explicit type and also auto type detection. They will the subspace of their arguments should be completely unoverlapped.
I wonder if there is a FEM link. Yeah, I think it should be there in the proposal, right?
Mean for this discussion?
That's correct.
Yeah. So there's a EIP, and actually I have an extensive discussion with actually there are two EIPs, so I should probably put another EIP here, another PR here actually. I should search for closed. So there's one, and then I have a lengthy discussion with McKay regarding what's the default behavior of name auto detection, and why we would like to use the name over string, because like for example, McKay says like it feels like people wants to use the name service like address more than string of names, so that we decided to use the name service as the first class, and then string just need to be explicit string type in the argument. Yeah, there's also a discussion regarding other types of just some wording of the rules. Yeah.
That's right. That's nice. And I think maybe you can go ahead with your presentation, and we will share it with community. So if people have more questions, they can reach out to you on the discussion tool link and add their thoughts.
Yes. So yeah, I also removed the specific name service resolving. So following the McKay's comments, so today I want to discuss a topic actually is also closely to the question just raised, is where to put the specified return type. Here at least a couple of the possible way to put the return type. It can be just following the name, the contract name, or the ENS name with the return type. This is, I feel like it'd be awkward because it's quite different with HTTP style. And another is like put this one just after solidity, just after the method ID. It's more close to solidity style because like I have a method and then return something. but probably the HTTP users may still have no idea what it is. And a more close to HTTP style, which I gave example, is just using the query part, and then let that the server will decide what kind of return types is going to be returned. But because all this can be basically random by server, so we just need to implement the corresponding server or native integration implementation. We just want to make sure that what's the best type that follow that meet our final goal. And so yeah, I'm open for any other suggestions.
Something that I just thought of and I'm actually really confused about, for let's use option C, the one that you highlighted because it's easiest to read. Is foo.eth like a token address, or is that a user address?
It's a token address. More like, for example, you can see USDT.eth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. And then bar.eth would be the user or the address that you're looking up, rather.
Yes.
I see. So this is where I get a little confused. Like, is the objective in this case, like if you're looking up foo.eth here, then that's just going to return you like a number in the browser, kind of like a JSON blob, the way like you can return like API data. Is that the idea?
Yes, it's just it's kind of like using this way I can query any for example Ethereum contract I can replace with address and then be able to return any JSON file without using, for example, MetaMask or any tools, just like.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, interesting. And then I guess it's up to your extension to determine what your gateway is going to be.
I can gateway and hopefully the extension or maybe native integration can make it as a kind of like client. I know like Portal Network is also doing some very cool things. I'm not sure it's able to integrate that. So that in this case, when user type this, it doesn't need any, for example, gateway or inferior. It just type it.
Yeah. You can just use like Lodestar's Lake client or something like that and just get away with it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it might be interesting to take examples in the wild of like doing a Uniswap swap or interacting with various dApps and seeing like what it would look like, the various kinds of calls that the dApps make to the contracts, and seeing what it would look like using this format in like whatever level of disambiguation you need with return types or argument types or whatnot. Because like something like Uniswap has a lot of parameters, so that could become unwieldy, and I don't know if that's problematic.
I think the problem is the post data manipulation. That's really the issue here. Because like you have to do so much parsing after the fact just to get things like standardized. That'd be really annoying. I say this because like we just wrote Web3.js in a way that you can like standardize at the like global level that you want like all units to return to like big nums or whatever, so on and so forth. It's just like doing that with like Uniswap, for instance, or even DAI is just like a pain in the ass. Pardon my language.
So you mean can standardize what the return types it is?
Well, it's just like kind of like what Trey was saying. Like I'd be curious to see what like a complex like call, not even a complex call, but like a more common call in the space would look like, because a lot of the time like functions aren't even returning you anything. You actually have to look at like the structs internally, you know, and like map things together to get like a reasonable return value.
So I think a couple of things that I haven't covered, did not cover too much details in this EIP. In for example, array, struct, all these things that right now we just say, hey, just follow the API interface, but definitely we are able to make it more clear what expected to be returned. Definitely, I think it's a very great suggestion. We are able to, for example, ENS or, for example, Uniswap. Right now, I think we have a Uniswap page that is on Linkbee. So Uniswap, but right now it is still basically the web page itself is still calling MetaMask to query the corresponding price or the information from blockchain. And definitely we are able to replace that, and so that we are able to, for example, for any user, even they don't have any wallets, no MetaMask, they're still able to browse what the blockchain looks like. And if they want to really want to exchange some token, then sorry, you have to install a wallet. And this is a list of candidates that you can use. Yeah,
but I think you're solving like two different problems here, right? Like you just described the provider injection problem, which is what MetaMask removed originally back in the day, like a year ago. And you're kind of talking about, I need to collect my thoughts
What
on
he's
that.
trying to do, if I understand correctly, is wipe out the entirety of the injected provider and make it work purely through links, which would mean he could use like a text-based browser or something else. But there's, from my perspective, there's a lot of overhead, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of non-compatibility with the current standards. So like Web3 dApps would need to adopt this and like lose out on a bunch of functionality, lose out on a bunch of responsiveness, and like it's going downhill. So I don't think this is, at the moment in its current state, a feasible RC.
So for one example that I'm trying to use is, for example, for example, Charlie mentioned creating a blog on the blockchain in his recent non-financial article of usage of blockchain. And with this, then we are able to, for example, share my tweets, share my articles, or share my blog without basically, which all are stored on the blockchain, but without asking a user saying you have to install MetaMask so that you can watch all my, for example, articles. Just type, for example, like Vitalik. Everybody just can type what the it's broken.
His site got DOS earlier today because he put up like a new blog post.
I'm sorry?
His site went down for a bit today because of a blog post.
Oh.
Yeah, it's also down for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 40-liter backpack.
Yeah, it literally caused him to go down. It's ridiculous.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, I can type in public. Yeah, so so when he shared the blog, then we don't need to ask the users to say, hey, you have to download a wallet. Some kind of like maybe read only applications that that we are able to easily to upload more web to users. That's one target that we are thinking about.
Question here. So I'm just trying to follow up with Greg's earlier comment that here the proposal is trying to come up with a solution to two problems. Is there a way like we can maybe separate it into smaller EIPs, like
Smaller.
Well, yes. Let me explain that. I think I have a better understanding of what I was trying to say. So there's kind of like two problem statements that have been made, and they're kind of not, I don't see them as related, but I see them as potentially one is codependent on the other. One being, as a user, I'll use user stories. As a user, if I don't have a wallet, I want to be able to query data efficiently. That's kind of like one problem statement, right? And then the other one is kind of like, as a developer, I want to provide my users with like a very seamless way to query data, right? And like those are kind of like two separate problems. that you seem to be trying to hit with the same solution, if that makes sense. Right?
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, one is solved with the light client, realistically. But like, you know, you don't really need a wallet. The light client could live even in like the dApp. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So, I mean, like, is it possible to have it like into smaller EIPs, like solving one for user and one for the developers?
Well, I think like the bigger question is like, what is the core purpose of standardizing like an HTTP like URL pattern? Like, what is like the biggest benefit you get? Right. I think that's like the number one question to ask. Is it for access to dApps, or is it for querying data, or is it for both? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and I think really just narrowing it down to that one example is probably the best here. Because like, yeah, it's like if you append the question mark, right? So the query to a URL, if you don't have it, does it resolve a website? And if you do have it, does it resolve data? Like I'm trying to like figure out like that middle ground of like.
So basically right now the protocol it is that if there's no return types, so no return type is specified, then it will treat it as a website. But look, obviously this is not a website, so it will. I think the browser still display it because it's a JSON format. Some browser will auto detect, but if there's an explicit, oh, let me see. Yeah, let me double check. Oh yeah.
Like,
sorry.
so I see what you're saying. But like my question is, like the ENS protocol technically already does this, right? Because you can just do like whatever, find the URI within keys pronounce like, I don't know, johndoe.eth. You know what I mean? And like that can resolve the website. So that's what I'm kind of trying to say is like, if this is purely a query format, why not just follow suit with the ENS name flow? Because like I think the big problem here is like this might be a better EIP for the CIPs, which is like the cross-chain standards working group with like Pedro from Wallet Connect and all those folk, versus like an EIP. You see what I'm saying?
CIP.
Mm-hmm.
Or what is full name of C content?
It's the CIPs. I don't know, like the type in like CIP cross-chain. I don't know, like Leagy, and like Pedro work on it. Yeah, right there. CIPs. It's the first GitHub link.
This one?
I think so.
Ceramic?
No, these are the ceramic improvement proposals. LOL. Let me find it. Because like this is touching on like, okay, this is like a personal opinion, but like I think a lot of EIP editors like stand by it too. Is kind of like we want to try and make the EIPs as like non-network agnostic as possible. Not necessarily network, but like it's for Ethereum mainnet at the end of the day, not necessarily for like the wider EVM ecosystem, right? Although we have to keep that in mind for security reasons. Like I worry this is like too generic, if that makes sense.
I mean for too generic?
Yeah, I think they are also available in the wallet Discord key if you are there on that channel.
Wallet Discord?
That's right. I may be able to send you the link later on. But if I'm getting Greg's point correct, the interpretation is this proposal is not Ethereum specific, but it is solving problems to more EVM related chain. And the idea of a standardization related to EIP is more Ethereum centric proposal. Is that
there we go?
correct?
Yeah, sorry, they're not CIPs, they're CAIPs. Apologies.
CAIP.
Like a lot of like, basically a lot, like I do a lot of work in the bridging space. And like, these are like standards for that stuff, because it's like helpful for like multi-chain focus. And I feel like this is more of like a chain agnostic way for like doing URL standards, right? And then you can get like wallets to implement them accordingly in browsers versus like,
and definitely apply to any EVM compatible blockchain, right?
yeah, or just any chain in general, really.
Probably not.
That's
that.
just my 2 cents personally. You know, it's like, because you can easily replace .eth with .near, with .sol, with whatever, right? So it's like, why not just make this like a
But they-
CAIP?
But they will have different master ID argument encoding. So that's something that I want to touch at the moment, right? So this
But
is
like those should always be different no matter what, no? Those are arbitrary. Query strings are arbitrary. Doesn't matter how you encode them.
yeah, just wait. But right now here is more specifically how we encode the EVM message.
I think I agree with you, Greg, that this is probably more of a cross-chain situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes
It's
sense.
just like, I think like standardizing, I don't know. I'm just having a tough time like with the use of like why I would.
Let
I
alone
don't
the
know.
claiming of the Web3 schema.
I care less about the Web3 schema. That's like irrelevant to me. I
Okay.
can claim HTTPS for fun. It's just about whether people actually like adopt it.
Yeah, of course.
Like I'm literally just like trying to understand how this would be implemented and how it would be consumed, right? Like you need browser adoption for it to be consumed, or wallets need to natively integrate it.
I also think it's very, very generic, and like how you would interpret what data you would get back from it really depends on the use case. So it's difficult for someone to just give you a URL and you just be able to properly display it. And you could add extra like hints on the side to be able to figure that out, but that puts a lot of effort onto wallet developers and browser developers.
Well, it's kind of like the graph, right? It's, I don't know if anyone uses it, but like half the time the data you get back is absolute gibberish, and you need to end up parsing it for like an hour until you can parse it into something like consumable. You know what I mean? It's like, I think the intention is right, but the question for me is like, do we actually need this as a form of querying data, or do you just need a playground to query data? You know what I mean? It's like in Web 2, you never really see like a, I don't know.
Yeah, like
It's like,
in
this
Web
is for
2,
like a website that to parse and like decompile, but it's like a known schema for the website. When you start doing generic schemas, it's kind of weird. You just get like a DB dump against an API.
and like you don't have like a content encoding header when you're making like a call to a
Yeah.
contract that you would have in an HTTP request. So that means that the URLs get really ugly and not human readable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like contracts aren't written nicely, you know? As I was saying before, it's like the usefulness of the data you get back from a contract is usually against the next chain to call. If that makes sense to anybody, it's like usually you have to chain like 6 calls together to get like useful data.
That's something that would actually we would pursue is like kind of like you can use the basically EVM contract as kind of like for example, as a backend that is able to store, for example, contract web page, JSON, JavaScript, or even, for example, blogs, or even tweets, as for example, Charlie also mentioned here. So if we are able to do it on chain, then we can solve a lot of problems, especially like IPFS static. With EVM, we can compose all the users' comments, articles, put it together, and be able to dynamically create them. But the fun point is that the Ethereum lack of a presentation layer, that we are able to directly access the content without using the wallet. So that when I share, for example, Charlie's post, then so sorry, you cannot read the post. You have to install MetaMask before you can continue. This is something that I think for the application that we are thinking about.
Can we take a step back? Did you say storing your blog on the blockchain
Yes.
in like HTTP format on Ethereum mainnet?
That can be Ethereum mainnet. That's something some project has already done. For example, cyber brokers, they just upload all the SVG to the Ethereum mainnet. But definitely we can find cheaper solutions with L2 or something else to support that.
So like, are we even IPFS? So like basically what we already have?
I'm sorry?
Isn't all of this like already implemented by most like browser injected wallets, aka MetaMask, Brave Wallet, etc.?
You mean the
Where you
query?
can literally just enter any Ethereum URL and it'll already do schema resolution and load the whole website of it. So your entire gateway would not be necessary in that sense.
I mean,
Calling
injection
custom
wallet?
functions from contracts through GET requests is kind of an odd one, because it really only restricts you to being able to execute certain read-only functions. Because remember, this is not connected to any provider, which means we can't like execute stuff, sign stuff, whatever, right?
Not necessarily, because like you can also, so right now the standard is more like just to locate the resources, just to read it, like kind of like GET, HTTP GET. But definitely we are also able to post, but suppose like the client, the browser has some way to just sign signature even without MetaMask, then you can compose this transaction and be able to directly broadcast to P2P, and that's still possible. But I think we just want to do things step by step, how we are able to solve pure read-only operations, how we are able to, for example, cyber brokers, they have, we just create a contract because they have no idea to render it on her blockchain. So it's still, even they said they have all the SVG on her blockchain, but they're not able to render it. So just randomly type a token ID. Then all the content here right now is composed by SVG, kind of like HTML, but all purely on top of Ethereum mainnet. Unfortunately, they don't have the way to, for example, using this Web3 standard to specify in their token URL. So they still have to use the let me see. So they have the token URL, and right now it still have to rely on IPFS as a copy, even though they said all the metadata has been uploaded on blockchain, because like they said, no, people will never worry about losing the data because all things is on top of Ethereum. So I feel like this is something that right now Ethereum is missing. Then we can, for example, replace this IPFS with Web3 and then point to the Ethereum method that, for example, this contract, I just create a contract and then repeatedly call their random method, and then it's able to retrieve it directly on top of Ethereum without any using, for example, other third-party service, IPFS, or maybe even wallet. Yeah, so this is pure on-chain render. I just changed the to ID, and then it just, I think it internally has kind of iterative generating method that output the SVG, a pinate, and I just put them together in the contract, and now I'm able to display it just using the standard. So random broker is the method, and this is just the U in 256. Questions of this kind of like application in terms of a bit more focus on web rendering using basically EVM as the backend, and then we use the data, and then so the EVM can compose this data, and then be able to dynamically render directly without relying on any wallet installation.
All right. So if I understand correct, would you be making new PR with updates that you have done so far? I'm wondering because you were looking into adding one more pull request.
Adding what?
Adding a pull request to update this proposal.
Update of
4804. Yeah, my question to you is like, as a next step, are you proposing to maybe make changes discussed and update the proposal?
Change following our today's discussion.
That's right.
But what was the conclusion of today's discussion?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Greg, I don't know if you would like to maybe summarize, like, should we go ahead and continue this as an EIP, or should he be reaching out to CAIP group and maybe moving in the direction of making it a CAIP? What do you think?
I honestly don't know. Maybe perhaps like the best course of action here is to see if like there is more demand for this. Reaching out to CAIP, so like Pedro from Wallet Connect and Ligi will definitely help there. I think taking it down that road is probably the best first course of action. Do you have like a lot of support for this in the wider community, or because maybe if there's other people that can shed light on like how useful this is for them, then like it would be really helpful for me to understand, but I'm just having like a really, really hard time seeing like the use case here. That's not like a burdensome for developers and users.
So right now this standard is just composed in February, so it's kind of in the early stage, and then we are also searching for more applications. One thing is like cyber brokers, because we notice they claim to be the first project to put all their metadata on the blockchain, and found how they achieve that, and they found they are missing the presentation part, so that even they have all the data, they are not able to use them on top of Ethereum. They have still using a copy of IPFS. So I think this is something when there are more and more kind of like applications, for example, they're using SVG to render the data, or for example, even ENS, they are proposing the PFP for their ENS names. And then if they are want to say they have algorithm that according to your name, they're able to randomly generate a profit, the profits picture. But point is that where to retrieve that? There's no way to be able to retrieve directly on top of Ethereum, even the corresponding rendering logic. The generation logic is already implementing Ethereum smart contract as supported by ENS. And this is something that I think say, hey, now you can use standard, and then you can display basically all the profile picture of that you randomly generated just directly on top of Ethereum blockchain by calling the contract that you created. Another example that I'm finding just a few days regarding Richardix he complained about like maintaining his blog on IPFS, all the issues. And then if you dump on chain, then we are able to do much better. But if we dump on chain, how we are able to render it and how we are able to, another question is how we are able to store it, right? There's another big problem. But at least there are a lot of, I feel like the more and more thoughts regarding how we are able to extend the non-financial applications of EVM. Definitely can be part of the financial application, but SVG generation, composing different SVG or articles, or DWAP generation. This is something that we feel like that there are more and more things that EVM can do great for, especially enable this kind of what we call dynamic decentralized website or web. Yeah.
Earlier, I remember you shared that there is a Uniswap implementation on some of the testnets. Just wondering, is it being worked in one of the devs from the Uniswap team, or are you in touch with that, or is it by the proposal development team?
So this one, it is the web content is stored on Rinkeby Uniswap, but actually the website can work on for any network, for example, Eastern Mainnet or any network. So because this website is just purely a copy of Ethereum front end, and then it still connect to the wallet, but the website itself is retrieved from this standard and returned to the browser, and it's displayed just as uniswap.org is. But the good thing is that using this one, but definitely it can, for example, using ENS, pure ENS plus the website generated, then you can manage the website on top blockchain using DAO or something else. Then it will be much better for censorship resistant.
Right. No, my question was like, are you working in association with any Uniswap dev? That means just trying to get the information on like, is there any interest of Uniswap for this proposal to support? Yeah.
Actually, we don't have direct contact of Uniswap.
All right.
We are interested if anybody can introduce and tell them, hey, you are able to do something differently rather than using IPFS. Yeah.
All right, that's not a problem. As Greg was suggesting that it is important to maybe reach out to projects to gather support for this EIP, and you already shared some of the use cases that you think would be useful for. So maybe as a next step for the next meeting, if we can get some more, feedbacks from some of the projects that may be implementing this proposal in future may help increase the chances of getting it moved towards final a little bit more.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm suggesting is like maybe before we discuss this any further, if we can have like some support from other teams that would be leveraging this, that I think that'd be a really good start.
Yeah.
Because it'll be up to them to help like shape it.
Yes.
I think at this point, like we've kind of said our opinions, and it's kind of, up to the community to adopt it for us to like push it forward.
Yeah. So one direction I'm talking about is called the .eth website subgroup. I already joined their Discord. There are a bunch of people that are also discussing other way besides IPFS hosting because they found a lot of issues and they're looking for some new solutions. I think we will have a .eth subgroup meeting in a few weeks, 1 or 2 weeks. And then they asked me to give the presentation and demo on how to use this standard and how, because right now there are also a couple of ENS, I would say gateway, like for example, Vitalik.eth.link or Nemo. So I'm trying to convince them to also adopt the standards to integrate in the gateway. So there's not only our gateway, but a multiple gateway can also support this standard. So there's a couple of the steps that we are making forward to wider adoption and hear how people are using them and what are the feedbacks, goods or bads, and then we are able to incorporate them in the EIPS.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's the
Alright.
best approach because like I feel like one problem that we have plagued the EIPs repo with is like a lot of EIPs that just like don't do anything and stay very stagnant.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be really nice if we could get this included once we have, and I forget the status code, but like once we actually have like some like actual adoption and usage of it, and have some people experimenting it, that'd be great.
Yeah. That's something I think I really would looking forward to it. And at the same time, definitely I would like to see existing projects, Uniswap, RV, Compound. And if you have connections and tell them, hey, there's a different way to host a website in a more decentralized way. Now you can using your DAO token to manage how it looks like. Then I think that will be also a very good exploring direction.
All right, that sounds like a good point to maybe break off for today. And we have some next steps for the future meeting. I know there were other proposals as well, proposal 2400 to be discussed today, but I don't see the author on the call, and moreover, we are on the an hour mark. So people can maybe refer to the comment that the author left on the Discord. I have added it to the work in progress document for URL and URI. One question for this group: when do we want to have our next meeting? The next meeting, if we keep it on like alternate week, it's going to be on July 4th, but I know July 4th is a public holiday in the US. So do we want to move it to July 11th or 4th?
Sounds good.
So yeah, I'm not sure like many people from US will be able to join on July 4th. So is it okay? We can keep it for July 11th?
I'm fine with that.
Fine with me,
Yeah.
as long
I'll
as
leave
we have
some
an
of the
agenda.
comments I had in the
Of
Slack.
course. Yeah. What I'm going to do like going forward is like create a tentative agenda and share it along with the meeting invite and on the public channel of Ethereum cat herders so people to follow. And I hope that will be useful for like having it on a regular basis, agenda and the summary and conclusion that we are discussing in this.
Great.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and hope to see you in the next meeting. Thank you. I will share the recording on the Ethereum cat herders YouTube and also on the Discord channel.
Okay.
Thanks
Have a
so
good one,
much.
everyone.
You too.
Take care.